So Bako, do you want to make a few words of introduction?
Yeah, Alex. I can, yeah, a few words for the introduction. Alex, I want to thank from the beginning season for your availability. As you know, from SERVIR, we think that data are the key elements of our SERVIR because it's not possible for us to provide services without data. So if we have data, we have to know how to manage them, to collect them, to put them in the good place, and so on. So I think this training is the good opportunity for us to have those kind of supports that we need. That's why I want to thank CIESIN for your availability and all the participants from the other hubs in general and West Africa in particular. So those are the keywords that I want to say before starting the workshop, the webinar. Thank you so much.
Excellent. So perhaps this is a good opportunity for everyone to introduce themselves. We're delighted that everyone is here. And so I will just call off names and then I'll be the last to introduce myself since I have a few additional, few slides of kind of setting the stage for the 3 days that we'll be spending together over the next 3 or 4 weeks. I'm gonna just call names as they appear in the list. So is it Abdullah Wad or is it AI Wad? I'm not sure what your... Bonjour, ça va, c'est Wad? Oui, et si vous pouvez... Le micro ne marche pas? Okay, il y a un problème. Okay, on va revenir, okay? So Paul, if you could say a word of introduction.
Hi, I'm Paul Bartel. I'm the Science and Data Co-Lead for SERVIR West Africa. Thank you very much.
Bob Downs, why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Great, thank you, Alex. So I'm Bob Downs, and I'm the Senior Digital Archivist and Acting Head of Cyber Infrastructure and Informatics Research and Development at CIESIN, and I'm really pleased to be here with all of you today.
Great, and Glory?
My name is Glory Inherwe. I work at AFRIGIST in Nigeria. I coordinate the training programs for SERVIR West Africa.
Okay, Olatunji Obayeji.
Yeah, my name is Olatunji Aboyeji. I am the Head of Department of Geographic Information Science, AFRIGIST, Ile-Ife, Nigeria. Thank you.
Welcome. Lawrence, if you could introduce yourself. Nganga.
Hi everyone. My name is Lawrence Eric Nganga, and I work at the Regional Center for Mapping of Resources for Development based in Nairobi, Kenya, and currently working at the ASMRD's data office. Looking forward to this webinar.
Excellent. Thank you, Lawrence, and welcome. Anastasia.
Yeah, hi everyone. Anastasia Wahome. I'm the Science and Data Lead for the SERVIR Eastern and Southern Africa at RCMLD. Thank you.
And welcome. I have Senna Adine from AFRIGIST. Sorry, I'm not sure if I have everything's name. Senna?
Hi everyone. I'm Senna Adimo. I'm from Africa ICT unit. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to make sure I get everybody. Mamadou Lamine.
Hi everyone, my name is Mamadou Lamine, and I come from CSA, Ecological Monitoring Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Mamadou. And Eugene, I believe from SERGIS.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Eugene Brown. I'm part of the GIT team and I work at SERGIS, Ghana.
Excellent. And Ibrahima, back to you. You're muted, micro. It's still not working. I'm not sure why, sorry, even when you're unmuted. But we welcome you. Are you at CSE? You can nod. Vous êtes à CSE. Très bien. Excellent. All right. Maybe if you want to try logging back in, it might work better. I don't know. See if there's also a setting on your computer where the microphone is set to some other device other than your computer. So let's go ahead and do the sort of introductory slides, and then I'm going to hand things over very quickly to Bob Downs. And I'll be introducing Bob towards the end of my presentation so you know who he is. And so first I have to share my screen, and so let me do that. And then I will switch to, okay. So welcome everybody. I wanted to introduce myself first. My name is Alex Desherbinen. I'm a scientist at the Earth Institute's Center for International Earth Science Information Network. We call it CIESIN. We much prefer the acronym CIESIN. We also run a NASA data center called the NASA Socioeconomic Data and Application Center. I'll be saying a word or two more about that in a moment. And I also chair an international scientific committee called the World Data System Scientific Committee. And I'll be describing a bit more what the World Data System is. What I hope to do is whet your appetite so that you actually say, yes, this is something we'd like to pursue. The training that you'll be receiving over the coming days is in uses as a rubric and uses as a framework the CoreTrustSeal requirements. So CoreTrustSeal you'll be learning more about, but these are I think 16 or 17 core requirements that data repositories need to meet, and they need to meet them for membership in the World Data System. Let me reframe that. I'm sorry, they don't need to meet every requirement, but they need to have a plan that would enable them to meet those requirements. And Bob Downs will be describing some of those nuances in more detail as we proceed. But the idea is that you don't have to necessarily score 100 on every requirement, but rather you should know where your deficiencies are, and you should have a plan to address those deficiencies. So this is meant to be a motivational talk, and one that I hope will cause you to say, yes, this is really important, and I'd like to stay for the full 3 days of the webinar. And I want to describe this in terms of a continuity of efforts. In February of 2019, I presented to this workshop. I apologize, the slides are in French, and we know some of you are Francophone, but I'll translate in English as I go along. And so there was a workshop on the elaboration of a master plan for in digital information at SILS, which took place. Paul Bartel was one of the organizers, and there were representatives at the high level from the SILS community in February 2019. And at that workshop, I presented for about an hour and had conversations with representatives from SILS about what World Data System membership is and what this community of data centers represents. In October 2019, I traveled to Dakar, Senegal as a representative of SERVIR West Africa, and also in my capacity as a World Data System, at that time, Vice Chair of the World Data System Scientific Committee. And we held a workshop on open science in the Global South, which was very well attended and included some representatives from different SERVIR nodes, including Agromet and also CSE, I believe. So that was organized largely by ERD, which is the French Research Institute for Development, along with UCAD, which is the Université de Cheikh Anta Diop in Dakar, and we had others involved, including CODATA and WDS. And at that workshop, at that conference, I organized a separate workshop which really focused on developing the capacity of regional data centers to actually provide real data. So again, I apologize. This is my slide from that workshop that was, again, my motivational slide. And I framed it in this way. I framed the motivation in this way, that many African countries for many decades have seen a lot of data being expatriated from their countries through graduate research and students, through international donor agencies gathering data. And some of those data are archived in archives outside of Africa and are accessible. But the reality is that many data never again are available to anyone else to use. And so I think it's imperative really for the region as a whole to develop the infrastructure and the capacity to archive digital data that are generated within its borders. I would even go so far as to say that it may be important for national governments to consider the need to actually require that research conducted within their borders are actually archived in the country, as well as, I'm not saying it should be prohibited to, take data for research purposes outside the borders of Africa. That's not my point. I'm a very firm believer in open data, but I believe that there's a real need to generate and develop the capacity of repositories to manage data in the long term within Africa. And that is my second point there, that this is trustworthy digital data repositories are critical national good that needs to be supported within Africa. And this does not mean, I should be very clear that this does not mean that one cannot use cloud services or other, everyone's moving to the cloud now. Our own data center is moving to the cloud. NASA is moving to the cloud. So it's not about where the servers are and where the infrastructure actually reside, but it's rather about the curation and digital data management that would be hopefully preserved within the institutions of West Africa and Africa more broadly. And we can have some discussion around this topic if it's of interest. I know there's other efforts like the African Open Science Cloud and other incipient work that's being done to develop a network of data centers in Africa, and I think this is all to be commended. So what is the International Science Council? This is the umbrella organization for World Data System. What we're hoping is that each of you would consider becoming candidate members of the World Data System, and then ultimately full members, what we call regular members, that is data repositories that have essentially gone through the CoreTrustSeal requirements. But the vision of the International Science Council, this parent organization that used to be called ICSU, some of you may know it by its former acronym, is to have science as a global public good. Scientific data, knowledge, data, and expertise should be universally accessible and its benefits universally shared. The practice of science must be inclusive and equitable, also in opportunities for scientific education and capacity development. So together with our partners at CODATA, the other data arm of ISC, World Data System is very much about trying to level the playing field and trying to make sure that data are openly accessible in all countries and all regions. Our own goals for the World Data System are basically to enable access to quality assured scientific data and data services and products. When I say data services, I mean things like web services, tools, applications. In fact, SERVIR is all about developing services. So this would be part of the mix of what a data center does. Also ensure long-term data stewardship, make sure that data don't get lost, that data actually are tracked and that they have, metadata and they have other things that allow discovery and access. Foster compliance to agreed upon data standards and convention, and then provide mechanisms to facilitate and improve access to data and data products. So these are all major goals of the WDS. We have principles of open data. I won't go into the details here other than to say that the encouragement here is that data, metadata products, and information produced for research, education, and public domain use will be made available with minimum time delay and free of charge, or where necessary at no more than the cost of dissemination. So the idea is, and then of course for low-income users or low-income countries, that the cost of dissemination would be waived. But I think it's now widely recognized that data platforms such as those that have been established in long-term among the NASA data archives, distributed active archive centers, or DACs, are a global public good, and that the very things like the experimentation with cost recovery on Landsat ended up being a failure because it suppressed use of Landsat to the degree that the data really were not being used and exploited. And it was discovered that once that archive was opened up, the Landsat archive was opened, suddenly the use exploded, and the returns to taxpayers and the returns by developing new data products and new services off of Landsat archive went beyond the minimum charges that they were able to, the minimal charges they were able to make on say $600 per scene back in the 1990s. There was a widespread recognition that that was a failed policy and that open data is the way to go. Lastly, I'll just say that data should be labeled sensitive or restricted only with appropriate justification. This is largely around medical data, data on endangered species, things of that sort, where it may be necessary to, have restrictions on access, and those should follow appropriate protocols for barring access. Anyway, the bullet above that is just about ensuring that the data are of high quality, that there's high integrity in the data are preserved accurately, et cetera. These are things that Bob Downs is going to go into. These are some of our strategic targets over the coming years. One of those targets, frankly, is to build up the global network of World Data System members. And here is our scientific committee, and we're wide and diverse group. I'll note that Aminata Garba, who just joined our committee, our scientific committee last year, is originally from Niger, has active work in Rwanda, and is based right now out of Geneva, Switzerland. But we have a wide and diverse group of people from all over the world represented in our scientific committee. I will just mention one other thing, that there's a call for nominations to join the scientific committee that's open now until 12th of May. And so if you feel like you have something to bring to the table from your data center perspective in your region, you can talk to me offline, and I'll be happy to provide more information on how to go about getting a nomination submitted. It's not terribly complicated. We have just, so we have an international program office. Just recently, that international program office switched from Japan, and it's now at Oak Ridge Institute in Tennessee, which is a joint effort of Oak Ridge National Laboratory, or ORNL. Some of you may know ORNL DAC. They're members of WDS as well, and the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. And so this new host arrangement just began, and we're getting underway with this major new effort to develop the IPO there. But this guides the overall work of the WDS and implements the decisions of the scientific committee, et cetera. And so they're critical. There's also a technology office, which was launched 3 years ago, and that's based in the University of Victoria in Canada. And Karen Payne is the director of that effort. And the technology office will definitely be part of building some of the capacity of new members or candidate members. So this is kind of a summary of the things that we care about at WDS, and you've probably already heard pieces of this already. And finally, in terms of the numbers, we currently have, I think, just over 86 members, regular members. We have network members, including the ESDIS and NOAA and other groups and geophysical research and other things. There is a very strong geospatial component to a lot of these data centers. So you are not going to be alone in any stretch. There's a lot of geospatial data being served by our members. Then there's other partner associate. But this candidate member category is the one that I want to underscore, is that we welcome any of you to sign up as candidate members. Maybe after this training, you can contact me and we'll get you set up. And that would be then something. What we want to do is, as I mentioned, well, I didn't mention before, but that the membership in the Global South is basically pretty sparse. We want to build the capacity of the Global South to manage data properly. So we're working in South America, with a colleague, Claudia Medeiros, who's at FAPSP, which is, well, she's at the University of Sao Paulo, or Unicamp, and she's a very noted information scientist. So she's helping to organize workshops and build up the network in South America. And we're also working through this training and other activities to build up the membership in Africa. These are some of the main topics. As you see, Earth Sciences, this is a word cloud, and so the size of the words represents the disciplinary and the content of the very kind of backgrounds of the different repositories. And you see Earth Sciences and Geography, Space Sciences, and other things are all very, very heavily represented. So as I mentioned, we are planning a buddy or mentoring system for the candidate members. And so we would pair you with another data center that is further along and would be there to help you and answer questions as they arise. So they would be building on the breadth of experience of these existing members. And the normal path to membership is expression of interest, going through the CoreTrustSeal certification, agreeing to what our bylaws for WDS, membership approval by the scientific committee, and then a letter of agreement. And then every 3 years there's a renewal. There are some costs to the CoreTrustSeal certification, but Bob Downs could maybe clarify later if indeed there's a waiver for data centers from the Global South. We have other endeavors and activities. I mentioned CoData. We work very closely with them. We are also involved with RDA, with Research Data Alliance, and GoFair, which is a new effort to promote FAIR data. And Bob's going to tell you all about FAIR data, so I won't go into that now. So in terms of this training session, I just want to mention that CIESIN is a Center of the Earth Institute. We're based at Columbia University. We're soon to become part of the new climate school. We're working at the intersection of the social, natural, and information sciences and specialize on online data management and spatial data integration and training. And we have a lot of research activities as well. And I won't go into those research activities because the time doesn't allow, but I'll mention that we do manage this NASA data center that I spoke of earlier. Bob Downs is going to be drawing on our experience, our long experience, over 20 years, really 25 years of managing that data center. And we also have projects with USAID. In addition to SERVIR West Africa, we have we worked with WABIC, which many of you know was based in Accra, Ghana, recently finished. We work on NASA projects apart from the data center that I mentioned. We have World Bank funding and Gates Foundation funding, a lot of other activities going on. Lastly, CIESIN is a subcontractor in the SERVIR West Africa contract with Tetra Tech. And we've been largely focusing on data standards, data management, and data center management. Finally, and most importantly, I want to introduce our trainer, who is Bob Downs. And Bob has been with CIESIN for, I believe, close to 20 years. He serves as our senior digital archivist and acting head of cyber infrastructure. And he is an elected member of the CoreTrustSeal Standards and Certification Board, a co-chair of the Group on Observations, or GeoData Working Group, and a co-chair of the Research Data Alliance Interest Group on repository platforms for research data. So he's your guy, he is your expert on all these topics. He serves as a co-chair of the Earth Science Information Partners, or ESIP, Information Quality Cluster. on the governance committee for ESIP, and on the editorial board for the International Science Council's Committee on Data, CODATA Data Science Journal. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Bob, and he's going to share from his wealth of knowledge and experience on these subjects. Thank you very much.
Oh, great. And thank you very much, Alex. And I'll share my screen now. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, let me put it in full screen mode here. Okay, great. And thank you for that wonderful introduction, Alex. And so I'll move right into our schedule so we're familiar with it. We're meeting today for our first session. Our second session is on May 12th, same time. And then our last session will be on May 26th at the same time. And since Alex introduced me, I'm not going to further introduce myself, other than to say I'm really pleased to be here with you. And I want to thank Alex and Paul and Glory and SERVIR for this opportunity to present to you about data stewardship. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about self-assessment and approach to it, including concepts associated with it, data product and service management, and then how we might begin planning towards obtaining CoreTrustSeal certification. This is going to be basically a lecture with questions and discussion. And there will be homework assignments. And so through that, I'm hoping this will give us an opportunity to have some practical hands-on experience. And I believe that the session is being recorded, and so we'll be able to see it later. So we've had the opening introduction, and then I'm going to start introducing some of these concepts and principles, and then talk about a little bit of the evolution of the certification instruments. And then we can get right into the CoreTrustSeal certification requirements. And then today, we can focus on some of the organizational aspects, that is the requirements associated with organizing your data repository. And then we can talk about the assignment. So the important thing with data is it is valuable, not only today, but tomorrow. And in order to make it valuable, we need to make it usable, and it has to be used. If data are used for various kinds of activities, such as research, as well as decision-making and learning, as well as various decisions that the general public might make, then the data have value, and the more they're used, the more value they have. And the data can represent an investment, really, in terms of the time and resources, as well as the knowledge involved in getting them. And so we certainly want to reap that investment in terms of getting the data used, and that way the value will be achieved. One way to do this is through open data. If we make the data open so that there are no restrictions on them and anyone can use the data, then they can continue to be used by anybody for any purpose. And an important aspect about open data is to make it clear that the data are open. That is, if there's a license or a statement or a declaration that indicates that the data are open, that should be clearly exposed to the potential users of the data so that they can see this. Ideally, it would be in the metadata, for example, where the data are described. In this way, the data can be reused. People don't have questions about whether they have the rights to use them or not. It's quite clear that they can reuse the data. And we really want the data to be reused beyond the initial collection team, the team of data collectors, so that we can achieve this return on investment from the original data collection activity. Only scientific value, that is where some investigators will be able to explore new research questions or hypotheses, but we also can achieve other values for society, such as healthcare improvements, improvements in communications capabilities, transportation, and generally quality of life. That is, society can improve its current state by leveraging the reuse and reusing the research that's already been done and using that data that comes from that research. So just to give you a little perspective on how we might facilitate the value of data, first we're collecting it, but then we need to curate it. We need to, in that regard, prepare the data so that they can be used by others, including preserving them. We need to make them findable. That is, people need to be able to discover the data so that they can use them, but we need to describe the data in such a way so that a potential user can determine whether the data are appropriate for their intended use and make those data actually usable so that they can access the data and use them with either the tools that are provided with the data or tools that are readily available. And then finally, we want them to be able to cite the data, which is an important aspect of this, so that if the data are cited, then the use will be recognized and the value will be recognized. Likewise, other people who are looking at an activity that utilize the data can determine how they also can get the data and use it themselves. So this is a little bit of a use case on the value of reusing data. And here we're looking at a disaster recovery situation. This is the GeoCollaborate system you're looking at on the left, which comes out of the Fleet Response Working Group. These are all the responders, utility vehicles and crews that go and fix power lines, for example, after a storm. So what we're looking at here is a track of a storm going across the Atlantic Ocean, and it's heading to make landfall in the mid-Atlantic region of the United States, and using data from the NASA CDAC, which Alex had mentioned, the estimated population can be determined. Basically, the population estimation service from CDAC has been integrated into this platform of GeoCollaborate so that people who are using this platform can estimate the population at a particular location. Here they can determine who is at risk, how many people, and then they can plan accordingly. So there are various certification instruments that are available out there. And these would be for data repositories such as data centers, archives, and museums, so that they can improve their capabilities. Generally speaking, there are two types of repositories that are housing data. And those are domain repositories, which basically represent a particular discipline or a subject area or a topic, or it might just be a theme, if you will. And then institutional repositories, they're much broader in terms of the coverage of disciplines, and they might be associated with just one particular institution, or it might be for several cooperating organizations. In terms of the infrastructure for data stewardship, we certainly want them to archive the data, and that involves things like ingesting the data, inspecting it, and validating it, packaging it, and of course, preserving it, but also preparing these for current and future use. We want to enable discovery so that those who have an interest in the data can find them, and they can explore them, get access to them, and actually use them for whatever their intended purposes might be. We also want to be able to provide support to users. That is, users might have questions about how a particular data set might be used, or how it has been used, or whether it's appropriate for their particular intended use. One place to start talking about data stewardship conceptually is the Open Archival Information System Reference Model. People always refer to this as the OAIS reference model. Basically, it's a framework for stewardship of various information resources, and it importantly defines the terminology so that we're all talking about the same thing. When we use terms to talk about data stewardship concepts